Our next speaker, Mike Del Ponte, who's the co-founder and CEO of Soma, recently named one of the 25 most audacious companies and the #1 design story of the year. Soma makes the world's most innovative water filter, for those of you who don't know. And Mike is also the founder of Sparkseed, a nonprofit supporting young social entrepreneurs. He led marketing at BranchOut, the largest professional network on Facebook, and he serves on the boards of the Global Center for Social Entrepreneurship and Mobilize.org. Welcome, Mike.
When I was invited to come and speak about this idea of connecting with millennials, the first thing that came to mind for me was calling. And by calling, I mean your vocation, your passion in life, what you are put on earth to do, the thing that you can do every single day that will give you a sense of purpose and meaning and contribution and impact. Because while many people today will talk about how you can connect with millennials through social media and different means like that, I want to talk about what you should be talking about. Because I believe that there's nothing more powerful and there's nothing that you can connect with someone better than talking about calling. And with millennials, what's interesting is we believe that there's not just a jobs crisis, but there's actually a calling crisis in America. For every person looking for a job, there's 10 people who have a job that don't have a calling. And my whole life and my whole career has been around searching for and following my calling. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story and some of the things I'm doing right now with Soma, how I found my calling there, and discuss why that's so important to millennials. So when I was 12 years old, I lived a pretty cookie cutter, leave it to Beaver type of suburban lifestyle. Mom, dad, myself, and my sister. And one day, everything got flipped. So I'm laying in bed, and all of a sudden, something wakes me up. I hear footsteps flying up my stairs. I look outside the window, there's red and white lights flashing. So I jump out of bed. I sprint into my mom and dad's room, and as I bust through the door, the entire room is filled with paramedics. And I look over, and sitting in a chair, my father has a ventilator on his face. And he's breathing the smoke, and it's like he's just breathing for life. And so my mom, grabs me, 12 years old, ushers me into my bedroom and says, you know what, it's gonna be okay. And I went to sleep. Next morning, family friend comes over and says, Mike, your dad's in the hospital. I said, yeah, I know. And they said, all right, let's go. So my father had emphysema my entire life. He was smoking since he was a teenager. And he was in and out of the hospital. It's scary as a child, but never anything too traumatic. And so being a naive 12-year-old, I actually brought my rollerblades to the hospital, and I figured, I'll rollerblade around, and then the doctors will come, and we'll go home, and it'll be fine. Well, when I got there, they brought me into the small room. And if you've ever been to a hospital and they've put you and your family into the small room, you know it's not good. So we're sitting there, completely silent. Doctor walks in, scruffy beard, white lab coat, clipboard, gets to the point. Said, I'm sorry, your father's passed away. In that moment, everyone starts crying. I go cold. And I hear a voice in my head that says, you're the man of the house. It's time for you to take care of your mom and your sister. I was 12 years old. First of all, I wasn't a man. Second of all, it wasn't my responsibility to take care of my mom and my sister, but that's what I heard, so I created a plan, and I said, I'm gonna get into the best college in America, and I'm gonna make as much money as I can, and that equals taking care of your family. And that was my plan as a 12-year-old. And so I did what a lot of high-achieving millennials did. I started doing all the varsity sports and leadership, this and that, and honor classes and SATs and all of it. And I worked my ass off from 12 to 18, and I got into some great colleges. And there was one thing that I didn't think about. I wish that little voice would have told me about money, because my family could not afford to pay for the private universities that I got accepted to. And I wasn't smart enough to apply to any state schools in California, which are phenomenal and not that expensive. So I was out of luck. I had this great plan. I enacted it. I did well. I got accepted to school, and for some reason, it didn't work. I was devastated. I didn't know what I was going to do, and to be honest, I was a little depressed. But one day, I went to the library to study, and as I pull out of my driveway, I look over, and I see an envelope in my mailbox. And with the envelope, when you go to a hospital and they put you into a small room, that's really bad. When you're a senior in high school and you get a big envelope in the mail, that's really good. So I jump out of my car, I grab it, I rip it open, and as I start to read this letter, it says, "Congratulations, you are now a Buck Scholar." Now, most of you guys probably have never heard of the Buck Scholarship. It's not a famous scholarship, but it's a life-changing scholarship. And once you get accepted, as long as you're in school, undergrad, grad, PhD, whatever, they pay for your entire life. So I went from having no money to having a foundation change my life and pay for my food and rent and books and tuition and plane tickets and laptops and study abroad and everything. But the most important thing that it did for me is it took away that burden of thinking that I just need to make money to take care of my family. And when I went to Boston College, where I ended up matriculating, the first thing that they told me is, we're not here to get you a job. We're not some kind of job placements agency. We're a university, and we're here to help you find your calling. And I'd never really considered it until that point, but one of the professors said to me, "Mike, if you want to find your calling, there are 3 things that you need. First, you need to find out what brings you joy. Second, you need to realize, what are you best at? And lastly, what does the world need?" What brings you joy, what are you best at, and what does the world need? And so that started me on this 8-year journey of searching for my calling and trying to answer those 3 questions for discerning one's calling. And I'll spoil the story a little bit. I erred way too much on the side of, what does the world need? So I ended up going to Nepal and became a microfinance consultant, consulting agencies that were helping 10,000 women in the Dalit or untouchable caste. I went to the West Bank and joined the Christian peacemaker teams, which was documenting human rights abuses and de-escalating violence. I volunteered at a child health care program designed to help 355,000 children in Kutch, India. I went to an orphanage in Jamaica, all of this stuff, activism, volunteerism, giving away my money. And ultimately, I even went to school to become a Catholic priest. Well, while I was there at divinity school at Yale, I started to really discern my calling. And I realized that what the world needs and what you're called to be can sometimes be 2 very different things. You need to consider what the world needs, and what I'm currently doing, I think, is addressing many serious problems. But you can't err on the side. Your calling is actually right in the intersection of those 3 questions. What does the world need? What are you best at? And what gives you joy? And so I started to discern, well, what does give me joy? And what am I best at? And I found that as I was on campus at this university, I was meeting all of these young people who wanted to change the world, but they didn't know how. There were these young social entrepreneurs that were still in college. They had great ideas. They were hardworking. They were passionate, but they had never been out in the workforce. And so I actually created a nonprofit organization called Sparkseed, which found the most promising millennial social entrepreneurs and helped them start their social ventures. So they would come and pitch us an idea for electric car charging stations or food programs in Mali or women empowerment in China, and we would select the most promising ones, and we would